Right on.
Right. See, we're live.
Right on.
Yay! Happy Motivational Monday, everybody. Nice to see everyone, our audience out there. So I think that you know, but my name's Ayana Perrin. I'm the owner and founder of Be Free Coaching and Wellness in Harwichport in Massachusetts. And I'm here with my friend, Cre, aka Lacretia. And she's going to introduce herself. But did we meet before I started stalking you on social media at
You
all?
got it all wrong. You got it
Oh,
all wrong. I
what?
started stalking you.
Get out. Wait, we were stalking each other.
You got it all wrong, sis. It was me stalking you. I've been stalking you for probably over a year and a half now.
That's hilarious because I
Maybe
kept being
2
like, who
years.
is this person? And then all of a sudden you were doing these lives and I was like, at 10 and I was like, who? And then I was like, I listened and then I was like, oh my God, she's like amazing. And then I was like, and she needs to come on and the world needs to hear her. And here you are. And then the world needs to know that like pretty much we're the same person. I mean, I think we look alike and a little bit more than we thought we did until we saw each other this morning. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. And I needed that very much. So I'm very open with my audience and just to let people know I woke up in a funk this morning. Like the race stuff is really hitting me in a funky way, and it's just COVID's hitting me in a funky way. Like I feel like I'm not getting space, and I'm like up here, and so when something happens, I'm like up here, and I'm trying to use all my yogi tools, but sometimes you just got to sit in the muck.
You know what?
So I'm kind of sitting in the muck, but I knew I was so excited to do this with you today because it would help me kind of move some of it.
Listen, you know what I say when it's like you try to use all those yogi tools and then it's like this fire inside of you. It's like, I ain't got no more namaste. I'm out of namaste. I want to blow some shit up right now. There's no more namaste.
My friends were like this morning, usually I have a meditation group, and I'm like, no, I'm not, fuck that. No, I don't want to sit there and be like, oh.
No more namaste.
I just can't. I don't have it in me today. It's like I just want to do this conversation, and then I just want to be in the muck still. And it'll release itself. What I've learned is that when I've tried to force any of the muck out, it goes sideways.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just being in it.
Yep.
And allowing it to be there, and then sort of feeling, because it's all attached to other stuff and other shit in my own life. You know, everything's connected. As we know, as social workers and counselors, it's all connected to the larger system of our lives and our ancestries and our trauma, right? So it's just, I got to sit through some of that, but that's all. But I didn't even let you introduce yourself. I went into my own thing. I was like, let me tell everybody about me.
But you know what? This is what I've come to know. We talk about what we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So the fact that you said I went into my own thing, it's just what needed to be. It's just like if we just let things flow naturally, it just happens. So that's what needed to be, sis. And that's that.
Totally. Yeah. And that's that. That's right. Well, I knew if I didn't say it, it would somehow sit under there. And then why let that happen? So anyway, tell us about you. And you're in Kentucky.
I'm in Kentucky.
And what's your background and all that stuff, and what's your current job, and what was your job? I know we were talking about schools before, and then we can just get into some other juicy stuff.
So I really feel like everything I do is like me studying to live and just like giving and doing from my overflow. So that's just like everything I do it's everything I do. I studied it first so I can have life. So for example, right now I'm a university professor, and I train those people who are training to be therapists, mental health, addiction, sex therapy, any form of therapy, school counseling.
The sex therapy.
Yes, all of it. If any form of therapy you can think of, I have students getting their master's degree to be therapists, but I also see clients at addictions facility. My favorite love is teaching yoga and just being in the body in that manner. I started off in addictions actually about two decades ago. I've been in every environment you can think of. In schools, I was in schools for like 10, 12, 11, 13 years. I think that it's just like this flow. It's just like this ebb and flow. Like I've been in this space and then I come out and then I flow in and get in here. So
I love it.
it's just the flow. I just love every single thing. Everything I've done is always connecting to humans.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about yoga and
Oh
why
my
you love
goodness.
teaching yoga.
So you
And
know how I found it? Go ahead.
can you tie it into some stuff around, because I do a lot with people around yoga and then releasing stuff in the body, but I'd love to hear your perspective because I think it's so important for us to really have that conversation about why yoga, using your breath, mindfulness really is the key to releasing all that kind of struggle in your body. And you said something the other day, I was watching you on that live or on the Zoom that was live, and you were hilarious. Sorry, pause, because I was like, I don't want to say anything terrible about the other people. They were wonderful. But I think your voice was really powerful in terms of talking about the body and the N word, right? That whole thing. But you kept bringing it back to the body, like no matter what the conversation was. And I was like, oh my God, that's when I said to you, we are exactly the same. Because that's what I tell other people all the time. It's like, how do you feel that in your body? Like, it's not up here, right? It's in your body. So speak
Everything.
on, girl. What is your perspective on that? And just give us some thoughts.
I'll tell you how I started. Well, how I found yoga was through the breath. And of course, if we think about the breath and just the body. So I started working with children long time ago. I mean, like they were in a crisis unit. And you know what I started doing with them? And I was being trained to be a therapist. And of course, trained in this traditional colonized way
Totally.
of talk therapy, right? Where
Yes.
we can't even access the prefrontal cortex, but we're asking people to talk.
Yes.
And so I remember I would sit with these babies, and I call all everybody babies. I call all the kids babies. But I would sit with them, and I don't know why or how my supervisors expected me to connect with them in the state of mind that they were in. And we know the atrocities that a lot of babies go through, right? And I would just sit with them and say, can we just breathe? And that was me attuning and connecting with them. I didn't even know yoga back then. This was in like 90 something. I don't know. But it was through that and with children and children teaching me that we could just sit with each other. And that was therapy for them.
Yeah.
You know how just their nervous system, like with co-regulation and how,
Yes.
especially with little children, their little nervous systems are always scanning the room looking for a healthy nervous system to co-regulate with.
Absolutely.
That's how I found yoga. It was through children that I learned. And y'all know what? That's yoga that saved me. Like it's completely changed and saved my life. But it was through them and connecting them with their breath and me connecting with them that I found yoga. And we know that yoga means to yoke, to unite, right? And if we think about the 8 limbs of yoga and how most people just assume that yoga is about the asana, about the postures. But really, if we could just sit back and get into like the yamas and the niyamas, or even pranayama, like all the limbs of yoga.
All of it. Yeah.
Think about it, how life-giving it is, right? It takes us inside, and it takes us to this place of like who we were originally created to be, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, sis. Like I really, really, really fell in love with me when I found yoga. Like I didn't know me like I know me.
I'm laughing because I was just interviewed on a podcast and the guy said, because I've had some trauma in my life and I'm in recovery and all this addiction stuff, and he was just like, you've had such this like crazy life experience, like how did you find like home, like how did you find yourself? And I literally was like, yoga, like when I found my body and my breath, like, and then some reason of the alignment of like I could connect to my spirit in a way that I couldn't before. And so it was always like I just went to like drinking to like that. In my mind I thought it made me feel like that, right? But when I found yoga, I was like, oh no, this is it, this is what's missing, here I am. Same exact thing. I was like, oh. And then once you can get grounded, then the world starts to open up. You're like, wait, I can see things differently and much more clear.
Oh, Absolutely. And doesn't it feel so good?
Yeah.
It's like I don't ever want to go back. Like I'm
Right.
not kidding you. I tell my kids this, and everybody that knows me, they know I say this. With any issue, sis, anything that comes up, I don't care what it is. You could stub your toe. I'm always like, go to your breath. Oh, go
Right.
to your breath. Oh,
Yes.
go to your
I said
breath.
that the other night too. Yeah. Yeah.
Go to your breath. Like everything to me is about going to breath. And I remember being, I'm just fascinated with humans and people. And pretty
Yeah.
much everything I know or anything I reference or like this shirt, like I just,
Love that
people
shirt.
and what they offer, I'm all about like, we're all connected. And so I remember
Mhm.
I was at the Black Yoga Teacher Association that would meet up at Kripalu every other year
Oh
in Georgia.
yes, I was gonna do it, and then COVID
Oh,
hit. I like
yeah.
literally went to register,
Yes.
and then boom.
Yes, so I've gone every single offering, and then
Good
there's a
for
yoga
you.
teacher, Dana. Dang, I can't think of Dana's last name. It'll come to me. And girl, one session she was like, "Cause y'all, you know how you breathing is how you living," and I was
You're
like
like
that just like
boom.
straight dropped a bomb on me, right? So I'm like, all these years, I'm teaching people about how they're when they get anxious, the breath is high in their chest, and when you're calm, is and I'm like, that's it, sis.
That's it.
How
That's
you
it.
breathing is how you living. If you're breathing and it's constricted, your life looks like that, right? And
Right.
if the
Exactly.
breath is flowing free and easy, your life is looking like that, right? I'm just like,
Mhm.
yes, girl, why you so magic?
I love it. I love it.
I know. I
I just love
know.
everything about you.
You know what? This is so funny. As you say that, anytime people compliment me, you know what I say? I always say, I'm gonna tell my mama. Because I had one of them mamas. Listen, I had one of them mamas that anytime somebody say something positive, she'd be like, that's my baby. So I don't ever want her to lose that. So when people compliment me, I'll be like, I'm gonna tell my mama because she
Well, you
sure
should.
gonna celebrate.
Yeah. Is your mom still around?
Absolutely. My mom, well, she lives in Illinois, but my mom is 60. How old did I say I was? I'm 45. My mom is
You guys, we were trying to figure this out before, and I was like, I don't know how old I am. I think I'm 45, but we determined I'm 46.
you think you're 46?
It's all about yoga, being in the moment. I lost the count. Oh my God. I can't even stop laughing. Yeah, so tell your mom that I love you.
Girl, I tell my mama. I tell her, I'll be like, y'all, I gotta tell my mama that. Anytime somebody compliment, I'll be like, let me tell my mama because she loves to celebrate me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's get into some you wrote some articles that you sent me. Well, you didn't send me the articles, but I wrote the titles of
Oh.
them. And they were really deep and really good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read
So
the titles were very like thoughtful around obviously race and culture and embodiment and all that kind of stuff. Can you touch on some of them?
most of
Share a little bit?
the articles, like when you're faculty or in academia, we have to produce these
Right.
professional academic writings. And even though that's not, so I love research, that's my jam, and I love to write, but I like to write on my terms. So,
Yeah.
but in academia, we have to write on the academia's terms. And so the articles and the research and the work that I've done is usually rooted in some passion that I have about people.
Yeah.
So I've written about and looked at just the educational system and the oppression when we look at Black and brown children. Like I've written about that. I actually write about that a lot, and I stay in that literature and just
Yeah. So
listen.
say some of your perspective on that. Just share it.
So I guess I would start when I was working on my dissertation. And in that process, my professor, my mentor, she had me really look at just a historical overview of the educational experience of black children. And that history, how most of us don't know the history of how there is not a achievement gap, but there's this deficit. There's almost like this owing, like there's this long overdue owing for Black children, because I don't believe in the language achievement gap, right?
Right.
Because it kind of puts us at a place to look at, we need to compare ourselves to Black children to white children, when we know that at the root, at the basis, there was an intentional act of keeping Black children from learning. Whether we look at Black codes that were done where it was
Right.
against the law for Black people to learn how to read, and especially if we look at up and down the Eastern Seaboard, all those states up and down the Eastern Seaboards, you know, starting with Virginia, of course,
Right.
looking at just the oppression and the abuse and the massacring of Black people for seeking knowledge, for seeking, just wanting to read. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But see, I don't know if we should talk about this because I already know your fire is like, it's been sitting there, and that boy might start. I saw it in your face just then, sis. You were like, mm-hmm.
Do you want me to tell you what that face was? So you've watched my daughter, so you see her, right? So it's a funny story about my mom too. So this is just her behavior since COVID. She's just struggling a little bit or a lot of bit, right? She's missing her friends. She's doing things like taking the iPad when she's not supposed to, those kinds of things. And so I caught her the other day and she had the iPad. And so I got very upset of, you're not supposed to have that unless you are, you know, asked permission. And she says, and I said, get a book. And she says, I don't like to read. I don't like books, which we know is not true. She was just responding, right? And so I pull out what my mother pulled out with me. It is a privilege for Black people to read and be educated and to, do you know how many slaves had to sneak? You know Harriet Tubman? I went on the rant because my mother did that to me. And I will tell you, I never forgot it. Never, ever forgot it. And I learned what a privilege it was. Now, I don't know if that was an overreaction. We talked about it later, right? So in the moment, total overreaction, right? But I was laughing because the information is actually true, right? So like when you talk about education and children and Black children having access to learning, I think what we're seeing now is that people are understanding that wasn't, they're learning that we didn't have that before. Like it's a whole new thing where I think white people are coming to understand those dynamics.
Well, so the most interesting part that a lot of people don't know, that our public education actually was started in those spaces where Black people were trying to educate their kids. Yes. So there was a time where it wasn't the thing. It wasn't anything that white people were pursuing. If you think about us being in an agrarian society where, you know, everybody was farmers, but there was always this intentional act of Black people wanting to educate their children. And so they started congregating and started creating schools and actually observing that model. It was white people who saw the Black people and wanting to practice that model, especially after the Civil War, wanting to practice that. And so a lot of the model and how, like, just these groups of people congregating to educate their children, that actually started with Black people. But a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, they don't.
No, they don't. And so a lot of people don't even know that Brown versus Board of Education, most people think it was about this act and this desire for Black people to want to be in schools with white people. And that wasn't the reason for Brown versus Board. It was about It was about the resources. It was about stop double taxing us. Stop this double taxation of our schools to pay for your schools, and then still not giving us our like what we've paid. So the poorest books, the poorest facilities, like all of that, we want to stop that. We want the same resources that we see over here that we know we've paid taxes for.
Right.
So most people don't know that. They assume that Brown versus Board was about, we want to go to your schools. In actuality, we had some thriving, amazing Black schools that were producing these amazing Black scholars, and they felt loved there. They felt valued in those spaces. And most people don't know that's why we have such a shortage of Black educators, because once Brown versus Board hit, all the Black teachers, because at one point in time, Black people could only go to normal schools. So normal schools that's what we call schools that prepare teachers.
I was going to say, normal. Yeah.
Yeah, and once upon a time, they could either go like to an A&T, like an agricultural, those types of schools. But a normal school was one of the only spaces that Black people could go to. And we produced all these amazing teachers. But once Brown versus Board hit, there was a complete just overhaul of firing of Black teachers, Black principals, Black educators, because white people said, oh, I'm not sending my kids to the school. So they would do things like close a Black school down and then tell that Black principal, oh, you're going to be the librarian, or you're going to be a secretary at this white school.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about why, as a Black person, would I continue to go into education when I know I cannot get a job in the schools, especially if it's a desegregated system. So most people don't understand the unintended consequences of things like Brown versus Board.
Right. Unintended consequences. That's a great way to describe it. Or maybe it was intended, right?
Well,
I don't know.
The unintended was the unintended. So we wanted our resources.
Right.
But we didn't want you to close all our schools and fire all our teachers.
Got it. Makes sense. Yes. Well, that's heavy.
That ain't a girl.
What?
Yes.
I'm just breathing.
So that's an example of like, I've studied this stuff and I've studied it so intently. Like my mentor, she was a sister, Dr. Johnson. She's at Western Michigan University. But I mean, she was intentional about, you all will, when you speak about something, you're going to know everything about it. So when I studied, I had to study not just psychology journals, but law journals,
right,
journals about urbanization, journals about history. I mean, I had to study every aspect of a topic, not just from one lens. So it was coming from all these angles. When I study something now, I'm coming from, multi angles instead of just kind of like what we do where we look at something and we take it for face value. But you know what? We have to critically think and critically separate and everything. We have to be good consumers with everything we read.
Everything.
Because we look at our schools and our K through 12 and how we've been prepared. We know that I don't know if you know this book, Lies My Teacher Told Me. We know that lies are just constantly taught to our babies.
Constantly.
Right?
So how do you stay in such joy with all this knowledge that you have? No, I'm serious. It's a real question. You're laughing at me like that.
I do. Like I still find joy in life. Like, but that's the thing, is the fact that I know that the universe conspires for my good. Yeah. That I know that everything is gonna be all right. That I know that this is just a moment in time. That I know that this is just a temporary deviation from love's perfection. You know, it's like, it's too much good. It's too much good to like let the bad overlay. Right. It's just so much good. And you always see what you're looking for. So when you're looking for good, you see the good, right?
Right.
So yes.
That makes sense. Yes. Right. So when I'm in that fire of like, I'm looking for the bad.
But in that fire, that's the thing, is like, most people, and I know most people take this approach. And I was talking about this to clients the other day. It's like you have a path, or you have an agenda, or you have something the way you need to see it. And say something outside of your control comes along and completely throws you off that path. Yep. Like, we could open ourselves up to say, okay, there must be something way better for me if that didn't work out. Right, exactly. Or we could say, damn, that's what and we could blame and we can do all that, instead of just keeping ourselves open to the possibilities. And also recognizing that in the darkness, in those bad experiences, I don't know about you and your marriage, but talking about marriages, just talking about marriages, because you're talking about, what did you say?
Well, you said I've been married for 22 years. I was like, damn, that's good.
You said somewhere, and I'm like, girl, bullshit, this ain't no, you said that's healthy? I said, girl, bullshit, this ain't always been healthy.
Oh yeah, I said that's so healthy.
Exactly. It ain't always been healthy. But see, that's an example, because it takes those really rough, dark experiences for us to get, it's just like this intimacy is created and developed. So the darkness can be fruitful. So there's so much fruit that can grow in darkness, right? And so right on to those 22 years of light, dark, of mountains and valleys, of sunshine and rain.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
Right. Totally. Well, I always talk to people about my husband because he's white, and then, it's like, and then we have this black daughter. There's all these dynamics that come to play, but I'm always like so thankful because we've learned so much more about each other in the world. Just be able to have those conversations that I don't know if I would necessarily have, if he wasn't this white guy, and to have those conversations that are really deep about perspective and race and all that kind of stuff in a way that's intimate, even though we don't always agree on it. It's really beautiful in the way that can, transpire. So that is healthy. I'll give you that.
There you go. There you go.
I was just impressed when people are married for that long. I think it's really good.
It's really work. How about I say that?
It's work. Totally true. Yes. And you know what? People always say, like, single people, when they're like complaining about it, I'm like, no, take your time. It's not necessarily about the work with each other, although it is, but it brings up all your stuff. So it's actually all the work in here that takes so much time and effort and scary stuff to look at.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said that.
Oh yeah, it's all about like what you're stuck in here. That's when people argue and fight. That's what it is, right? It's all about the stuff that you're afraid of. Because talk about when we were saying like, oh, how's it to look at your mirror? I'm like, it's so fun. But this, it's also like if you're intimate with somebody, right? Your husband, it's like they're gonna mirror what's really what you're afraid of. They're gonna mirror that. So you can work it out, right? The universe will give you the information that you need to work out. And that comes with intimate partners.
And then you usually see like your stuff about you that you don't like.
I know. And then it's in your face and you can't get away from it.
And it is so in your face. And it hurts. It hurts because you're like, ugh, that's ugly.
You're like, oh, I knew that was there, but I didn't really want to see it.
Yes. Yes. I always used to tell my husband all the time, I'll be like, I know it's ugly, but love me anyway, okay?
Well, that's what marriage is. You just said it. You just bottled it right up.
Well, that's the sad part is I would say that to him, but on the other end, some of his ugly stuff, I'd be like, I don't know if I'm in love right now. And just being honest.
Women, that's okay. We can do that.
I'm just being honest. It's like I don't have to pretend like it's always good. It's not always good. It's not.
No. No. I mean, life isn't always good.
Mm-mm.
I mean, as counselors, I don't know if you know this, but I think when people come to therapy and they come to do stuff, it's always when something's wrong,
right?
Or something's horrible or awful. And then, I'm like, no, like, welcome to your new opportunity. This is awesome. The fact that you want to look at it, like, yay, and this is fun. And people are like, you're butt crazy. And I'm like, I know, but I love it. Because then I get to watch the growth, which is so cool. And like we were saying before, just around therapy and the connections and spirit, and just as I think the construct of that people don't understand too is that the separation is very white, right? It's very the way that we train people to connect with each other around just the dynamics of therapy and power and all this kind of stuff. It plays out there too. So just really connecting with people and making sure that whole spirit is held together.
I always think about what if like capitalism wasn't a consideration? Because I always think about like when you were talking just now when you said about this dynamic of being a therapist and being with someone. I remember thinking, and I remember saying to my clients all the time, like, I want you to get into a space where you don't need to sit with me anymore. Like, I don't like this dynamic of you come to me and I know better. Now, everybody I sit in front of, I don't know. Every human being, I always say, you know you way better than I ever could. The only thing is, and to me, this is ancestral, what our ancestors would do. We would come together. We would sit together. We would move together. We would dance. We would release stuff. And it is at the root is this attunement. Like when you look at the literature, and there's so much written about this. And I don't know why we keep pursuing this idea of like these theories and these old white men that created these theories on how CBT and Adlerian and all this stuff. When you look at the number one tool in a therapeutic relationship, the number one tool that creates change is the relationship.
Absolutely.
It is the relationship. right?
It's connection. Yeah, it's
So if
connection.
we pull back and look at how do I connect and attune, and I think about even when we were talking about the top down therapy, the talk
Mm-hmm.
therapy, instead
Right.
of bottom up, instead of considering how trauma, stress, all of that comes through our five senses. So it comes
Right.
into our bodies. And just like it comes in, we should be able to let it out. And we can't even access up here
Right.
until we've moved some things so that we can relax the middle part of the brain, relax the
Right.
stress response, and then get into our rational and cognitive selves. Right?
Absolutely.
Girl,
Absolutely.
girl.
I know. It's like you wrote my Be Free model. You wrote my whole business model in your head. I just pulled it out of you and put it on paper. I
It's
mean, it was
so
mine
good.
too. It was mine too. But you just described the whole thing because I was so sick of like talk therapy and working with people that had some really deep-seated trauma, but particularly people of color who have no idea that racial trauma is the problem. It's not them. It's outside of them and what they've seen for so many years. And ancestral stuff can get passed down so that you can feel all of those feelings without ever feeling like you had like a significant incident, right? Or all those microaggressions that come up and all of a sudden something
Yes.
makes it so big. So it's like, no, we gotta get that out of your body, or at least become aware of it in your body.
Yes.
And then we
Yes.
can have a conversation about it, because otherwise, what the fuck are we doing?
Yes. Yes. I don't
We're
need
just
you to
talking,
sit.
we're talking up here,
Yes.
which does nothing. It does
We're
nothing.
just
It's like
talking.
this much of the world, it's like this much shift or change is going to happen. It's like you got to, but that goes for anyone talking about racism too. So I've been trying to work with people, white people too, around like, you can't come from here when you're talking about racism. You got to come from your body. You got to feel it. You got to understand it. You got to know it in here, and then you can speak about it, because otherwise it's kind of air.
Girl. Oh, there's so many things you just said in that. I'll tell you the words that, like, as you were talking, I'll tell you the words, the themes that popped up into my head. So I thought about just generational remembering and how it's so critical that we go ahead and do these like archaeological digs and just get some of that stuff up, right? Yes, that popped up. And then what popped up in my head is like sitting with others, especially those people who want to rationalize and be cognitive about so many things, which is very much a colonizer's way of seeing
Right.
instead of being. And just how I just did a little workshop with the yoga studio where I teach, and it's all white women, well, and one other Latina woman. But I was telling them, and what I would have them do as we were talking about the content, and I said, now close your eyes and tell me, where do you feel that?
Right, in your
Because we
body.
don't need to think about it. I want to know where you feel it in your body. Because
Right.
we all know that we feel things first and then we rationalize it with our minds.
Right. And then we try to make sense of it. Yep.
We do that. And instead of you going and trying to say, well, they certainly that white person wasn't really that mean, or certainly, maybe the black person misunderstood it. Instead of going there, go here. And when we talk about a baby boy playing outside with a toy gun and that he was basically hunted and murdered, where do you feel that? Right? Like, where do you, like, how can you as a human not feel that? When you hear a grown man crying out for, like, we all know when we were children, like when we get so scared, we like, mama, like we cry out. When you hear a human cry out for mama, where do you feel that? Don't talk to me about what he did or where do you feel that?
Did. Yeah. Okay.
But where do you feel it? That to me
exactly
is where we have to start as humans, right?
1,000%. Yeah. 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 I was telling people, because everyone's always asking me, like, what do you do? How do you change? And I talked about, and Michelle Cassandra Johnson, do you know her?
So
I interviewed her, and we were talking about because I said everyone's asking me what to do and what the answers are, and I said, what do you tell people, right? Because you do this work all the time. And so she said just what you're saying around, we have to get people to understand the collective suffering together in their bodies in order to understand how to make that kind of change. But we can't ask them to make that kind of change unless they've started there first. Because otherwise, what are they doing? No one knows. They're not reaching for any kind of goal because they don't know where they're going.
Yes.
But once you feel that in your body, you have a path, you have a direction, and it's super clear. Like there's no question, because you can always come back to being grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been using that collective suffering everywhere I go, because I'm like, you got to tap into it, into your own body, and then we can move to a place of healing together. Yeah.
That's so good. You know what I tell my students all the time? As you prepare to go sit with another human soul, the first thing you need to do is go sit with you. Because I don't know how you can sit with another until you've sat with yourself. Right? So
Yeah.
go sit with you. I mean, I say, my students say that jokingly now. They're like, we know we need to go sit with ourselves. Like, sit with you, because wherever you go, there you are. And your shit, all your stuff will come with you. So we see with our brains, not with our eyes. So when we are with another human, our experiences automatically become a part of that. So go work through your stuff. Go work through, that and the ancestral stuff. Go work through the fact that if it's a white person, somebody you love very much was probably nannied by a black woman, and they were on black people, right? Go sit with that. There's probably a man, an uncle in your life who probably not just physically but emotionally abused another person of color. Like, go sit with that, right? Go sit with you. Go sit with you and your stuff, right?
Right.
I don't know how you can sit with another until you sat with you.
1,000%. And that's so important, I feel like, for people to hear, because they come up to this defense of like, I'm not racist. And it's like, whoa, because it's like, they just need to do what you just said and go back and just sit with it. Like, well, what does that feel like to have that be part of your history? It's part of your history. Like, what does that feel like? And of course, it's super uncomfortable. And of course, as humans and as therapists, we know, fear is only the defense that comes up. And anger is just the defense that comes up over grief, right?
Okay.
It's all grief underneath that.
Yes.
And so defensiveness is the same thing. It's just fear of looking at what's real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then that's hard to look at. But on a positive note, for those of us who have done the work, it's beautiful on the other side. So I think that's
just like in those marriages, you get to the other side, and it's like, oh, I love you again.
That's so true.
We went
it's like, I'm fucking hate you. It's like, oh, but I love you. But you're the greatest. So true. Yes. All right, you guys, we got to wrap up. We got about 5 minutes. If there's anyone that wants to ask us a question before we got to wrap up, we are happy to, or comment, or we can comment, or whatever. If there's any, I just like always to give some time before we have to leave. If there's any information or questions, or it takes people a time, I'm just letting them breathe.
That's okay.
Yes. Can you see that?
Tanae said, y'all fire is ignited. Yes.
Yeah.
Tanae, I don't know. My sis over here, she ready to burn some ish down. And I had to tell her, you're going to have that fire can destroy and create. I need her to channel that fire to make sure she keep creating all this goodness. Because she ready to just like.
It's so funny. I know. I won't ever destroy anything. My fire will always be in a positive way. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I got to wrestle with it for a little while to understand it. You know what I mean?
Who you telling? You telling?
And if I push it away too quick, it doesn't go in good places. Right. It goes to my gut. Yeah. And then I personally can get ill. So I kind of just got to let it be.
That's so good. That illness, like anything that's aching in our body, we have to know that there is some emotional counterpart. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People don't understand, like, physical sickness really is about emotional unwellness.
No matter where it is.
No matter where, there'll be days I wake up and seriously, my body is aching. Mm-hmm. And it's really just emotional stuff that I haven't paid attention to. Mm-hmm. And it's just through yoga and meditation where I'm like, oh, that was from that, and that's old, and I don't need to be paying attention to that right now, and we're good.
You know what I call that? I say anytime I get an ache or pain, those are little love notes. These little love notes from my body that are trying to let me know, girl, you need to do this or you need to adjust this. And I
Right.
tell people, instead of like trying to shut your body up, taking a pain pill and saying, shut the hell up, listen
Right.
to those love notes. There's all kind of little love notes that are being sent to us, right?
Yes. Yes. All the time. All the time. And I feel like people don't look at them like love notes. They look at them as pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look at them as yucky or bad.
Or an
And then,
annoyance.
or an annoyance. And then they respond to them in that way. And what your body's really looking for is comfort and love.
Instead of looking at it like this is some good news. It's just like working with people. Like if we think about our bodies, because we service people how we see them. So if I see you as an annoyance, or I see this pain as an annoyance, or it's irritating, or it's distracting me, then that's how I'll service it.
Right.
Like I usually tell my clients, like, okay, you have an ache, close your eyes and just listen. Say, okay, shoulder, I hear you. Like, what's going on? I want to breathe with you. And even reconnect and reestablish your relationship with that part of your body. Because most of us we have been abusing our bodies, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I used to tell people, like, I drank so much. I'm surprised my body can even do yoga. Like for years, I was in such a, like, you know, but again, it was around the spiritual stuff is once I just tapped into being able to let that go, all of that stuff was much lighter. Yeah. But like, you know, like I can't even, and sometimes I'll get caught up in that, like when anger and I let it get too much and all that kind of stuff, it'll hurt in my body and it'll be like, oh, it's just a reminder. It's just a gentle reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up, or you want to share? Or you've said a lot, and this has been an honor. And your smile is just amazing. I just want to bottle you up. Can you come live with me?
Listen, I
wish I could hug you.
I know. We'll just meet somewhere on the other side of the moon or something and hug, and nobody has to know that we hug and we didn't wear masks.
Nobody has to know.
Nobody has to know that
we just tell the whole world, but that's okay. That's our business.
I just enjoy you, sis, and I enjoy observing and watching your baby girl and all her dance moves and just the life, right? The life we get from knowing. So I always tell people this, like when I think of others, it just gives me life and how we're all connected, right? So like just my awareness and knowing of you is life-giving in itself. Mm-hmm. Right. So then it's just like, why would I not want to live another day when there's just so much goodness in this world?
So much goodness.
Right.
Yeah. 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 It's like you can see my soul. You knew I needed to hear that. I see you. I see what you did there.
But wait, this is what I need to say. The fact that, look, bring your face in. When we were like, oh my gosh, we look alike. So
I know, we look alike.
Especially the fact that you said, oh, but you don't have the gap. But I did have the gap. And
I know, it's so funny.
Closed my gap. But there was a gap right here. So there is a direct.
I know. I was just doing so much research about it. And they're like, no, in Africa, like, you know, being heavy and having a gap is like a sign of like hot sexiness. So I was like, I'm not closing this.
Let me be sexy.
Let me be sexy. Let me show my gap.
Yes. I love it. It's beautiful.
I just want to show this comment again. This is so good.
Yes, Tanae.
So good.
Tanae, trust you. Like I tell my students that everything you need is already within you. Like trust you. Like like it comes. Our ancestors have brought that with us. Like we have this generational overcome, this generational knowing. And so trust you, even with clients. It's like you don't have to go to what your training program told you. Like this, and this. It's like trust you. So I love that you say that, Tanae. Trust you, girl.
That's a really good point, because I had to wrestle with that and be like, wait, how do I want to hold space for people? It's something's not resonating in the way that I was doing it before. And I just had to sit with that. And it was just it came from yoga of like how you hold space for people. It can just be like you were saying with kids. Sometimes they just need me to sit there and be quiet and just have a space for them. You know, and I got trained in restorative yoga, and that was the most powerful thing for beings, because I just allowing them to be in that space of healing. We weren't even talking, and just the beautifulness that can come out of that kind of space. It's the same thing with therapy. You don't really have to talk so much. You can just be and witness.
You know what it reminds me of? Sitting with my grandma.
Yes.
Just sitting and just sitting. And
And
when
just
she said, no,
being.
just be quiet.
Yeah, just
And we
be.
just sit there, especially if there's a storm. You know,
Mm,
I don't know about you, but growing up, everybody in the black house, you turn all the lights off, TV, everything turn off. You better not get on that phone. But she just say, why don't y'all just sit and be quiet?
right.
And just the, oh my gosh, the intimacy, the connection of just sitting with her in silence was so healing. It was
So
so healing.
Yes.
Thank you for sitting with me today.
Thank you for sitting with me. It was so beautiful. And we'll be in touch. I love you.
I love you. We're going to hug.
I know.
See you soon.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.